Hello. This week's topic is the judiciary. Please make sure you read the assigned pages before you attempt to answer the written question for the week. But in this video, I'd like to give you a short lesson on the court system here in Michigan, and then talk just briefly about the process by which we select our judges here in the state of Michigan. So in the reading, you're going to read about different types of courts. For example, there are courts of limited jurisdiction, there are major trial courts, there are intermediate level appeals courts, there are courts of last resort. So the corresponding courts here in Michigan, the limited jurisdiction trial court would be the district court. There are quite a few district courts around the state of Michigan. In the Metro Detroit area, those courts are generally covering one or two or maybe three suburbs. But at larger towns or larger cities will have their own court. For example, Dearborn has its own court. Dearborn Heights has its own court. And again, these are district courts. And of course, the one in Detroit is quite large. So they have the district courts handle minor disputes, minor infractions of the law. For example, speeding tickets get handled by district courts, and preliminary hearings in cases go to district courts before they go over to the major trial court. So if someone is going to be charged with a crime formally, it happens in a local district court, and it's going to happen in the court where the crime took place. Okay, so that is the district court level in Michigan. The major courts in Michigan are called circuit courts. Circuit courts in this area generally cover a county, so you have Wayne County Circuit Court, or Oakland County Circuit Court, or Macomb County Circuit Court. In other parts of the state, they might combine several counties, but again, they are major trial courts because they handle felony cases as well as major civil disputes between two parties that involve a large amount of money. Divorce cases also go to circuit courts in the state of Michigan. Above the circuit court, you have the Court of Appeals. That's the intermediate court of appeals in the description in the book. But here in Michigan, we call that just the Court of Appeals, Michigan Court of Appeals. And the Court of Appeals would cover several circuits. So they would hear appeals from any of the circuit courts in that jurisdiction. And the appeals courts do not handle trials. That's not their job. Their job is to decide the legal facts in a case. So if someone is taking their case to a court of appeals, they're asking that court to review the decision of the trial court and decide whether they made the right decision or not. So they're not deciding guilt or innocence. They're deciding whether the trial court made the right decision. And appeals courts do have the authority to reverse the decision of the trial court if they find that it violates the state constitution or possibly the U.S. Constitution, but certainly the focus in Michigan courts would be on the Michigan Constitution itself. The court of last resort in our state is the Michigan Supreme Court. It is headquartered in Lansing. There are 7 justices who serve on that court, and it handles any appeal from the state of Michigan involving the Michigan Constitution in some way. Most cases do not make it to the Michigan Supreme Court. It only handles a limited number of cases, and it only is dealing with major issues of the state constitution. So that is the court system in our state. In terms of how judges are elected and chosen, in the state of Michigan, I just kind of gave it away. The judges are elected in nonpartisan elections. You'll read about that in the book, but that means that judges do go on the ballot, but they don't have a party label next to their name on the ballot. Now, it's a little bit misleading because the major political parties here in our state do nominate judges for those offices. So the reality is they actually really are partisan candidates, but they run without a party label on the ballot. The lower level court judges typically serve 6-year terms. And when you get up to the Michigan Supreme Court, those terms are 8 years in length. We also have a mandatory retirement age for judges in Michigan. And so when they reach that retirement age, which is 70, they have to step down after the next election. The So the lower level judges are appointed, as are the Supreme Court justices. Again, we're just talking about here in Michigan. It's a very common system in this country to have judges elected in nonpartisan elections. Now, some states could have partisan elections. The authors of your book also refer to the gubernatorial appointment idea, which is that the governor would make the appointment subject to approval by the Senate in that state. In Michigan, although we have the election process, sometimes judges do resign their seats before their term is up, or they might pass away while they're serving. And in those instances, the incumbent governor does have the authority to appoint a replacement, and that replacement does not have to be confirmed by the Senate. He or she will serve on that court until the next election. Now, when they're running, if that appointed judge decides to run for the office in his or her own right, they're going to have an advantage because on the ballot in our state, the incumbent judges, the ones who are serving, get the designation of judge on the ballot. So you would see Judge so-and-so on the ballot for that court when they're running for election. And since a lot of people aren't aware of who's running, the incumbent typically has a large advantage because a lot of people just simply pick the person with the title of judge on the ballot. Now, I would certainly urge people to really research these judges before they vote, because just because that person is the incumbent does not mean that he or she necessarily makes a good judge, but that's a call that voters have to make. So that is our system. Now, there's also the issue of how the legal principles by which they decide cases. That's discussed in the written online lecture, and also the issue of plea bargaining in criminal cases. So please make sure you read through that carefully and then answer the written question. And if you have any questions, just email me. Have a great week. Thanks.